Hey, are you trying to navigate your way through blues changes and address maybe chord tones through a simple 12-bar blues? Well, in this video, I want to kind of share with you some insights that I apply for my blues playing, and if they're useful to you, that would be really great. My name is Matt Friedland. I'm a professional music teacher, and what I want to show you guys today is if we're going to look at a blues in A, for example, just some basic things to get started if you're struggling to kind of connect the dots. I had a student earlier today that said he wanted to be able to play blues changes. We jammed a little bit, and so I want to share some of the insights that I have developed for myself, and if this is useful for you, that's awesome. So if we're looking at a simple blues here, maybe like a shuffle in A, think of just having an A chord, 4 bars of the 1 chord, the A, and then maybe 2 bars of the 4 chord, the D, and then back to the A. Just 5, 4, 1, and back to the 5. Like that's a very basic triadic framework, no fancy stuff for now. And let's say I put on a drum track just to give a groove to it, so we get something like A again, and then the D, and back to the A. E5, down to 4, back to 1, back to 5, and then be the top. So kind of your just simple standard 12-bar blues in A, but all major chords. So there's some things here where we're talking about how to address the actual chord tones. Sure, we could play pentatonic. You know, you can use the pentatonic scale and the blues scale, but if you're interested in saying, well, how do I target more of the chord tones to bring out the changes? Here are some simple starting points. And these are some things that have helped me. Is one, I kind of look at just a basic triad shape. So for example, like just A major, if you just have that triad shape, A, C sharp is the 3rd, and E is the 5th. And I say, well, okay, well, what can I do with those 3 notes to develop some ideas? And it's the triad, so I'm definitely going to hear the A major sound with that. So this is going to maybe be a starting point. If I put on a drum track, get something like, just triad. Just jamming with it. Okay, so it's not the coolest thing in the world yet, but the idea is I'm just limiting the number of notes that I can play so I don't get overwhelmed with all the choices that I have and get lost in the form is the way I think about it. Now, of course, you can slide in to each note, give it a little articulation as maybe a way to make it more musical. So let's say if I were to take this shape and I have to get to the 4 chord, if I could use the same shape to get to the D, maybe I just move it up over to the D. And by playing just those 3 notes again, now I'm actually addressing the notes in the D chord. So I'm really going to bring out that sound and play the changes now. So let's say I structure it where I'm playing 4 bars of the A chord as an exercise, and 4 bars of the D chord as an exercise, just to get used to transitioning back and forth before I take on the 12-bar form. So I'm going to play through it, and what I am going to do is I'm going to rest on the 4th bar. So I give myself time to make the change. If I'm playing too much, I'm going to lose track of the number of bars, and I'm going to miss the change. So 3 bars of playing, rest for the 4th bar, then switch over to the D chord. So something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, back to A, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4, 1, 3, 4, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Back to the A. Okay, now as you're kind of doing this, or as I'm doing this, I'm kind of trying to get my phrasing down so that I can make these transitions. And it's kind of a work in progress, right? It's not going to be exactly the way I want it right away, but the more that I do this, the more building blocks that I get. So that was just A for 4 bars, D for 4 bars. Now I can also maybe keep the chords closer together. So here's A here, and instead of going to D up here, what if I go to the D triad right here? So now everything's kind of in the same place. So let's just try that out. So I have the A. Now the D right here, 3, 4. Back to A, 3, 4. The D. Back to the A. The D. Back to the A. And here's the D. And then back to the A. Okay, so again, now I'm kind of using the same range, the same area. And ideally when I go to play, I want things to be close together. I don't want to necessarily have to jump around from location to location if I'm navigating the changes there. So really the first game is like, okay, can I play these little games with like 2 chords and use just a basic triad to get between just 2 chords? Because the more that I feel like I take on, more notes I try and play, the harder it is to maintain my place within the form and keep track of the time. And of course we could do this going from E, A to E or something, or even E to D. Because you have the 5 to the 4 change, 2, 3, 4. So that might be a cool exercise. Maybe I do 4 bars of E and 4 bars of D. And so I'll use these triad shapes for E and D. And I'll play that game. So that might turn into 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here's a D, 3, 4. Back to the E, so. Back to the E, 4 bars on the E again. D. Okay, so now I'm working on the change from the 5 to the 4. So I get some ideas, but I'm giving myself more time between each change so I have time to switch. And this stuff could also be applicable to maybe it's just a jam between, E for 4 bars and D for 4 bars. It could be useful in a jam context using just those 2 chords. So I'm playing these games back and forth and it's just triads. And I'm kind of thinking rhythmically what I can play over it. There's some rhythmic ideas that I can utilize. to get some ideas. And it's not necessarily like music yet, but it's starting to get there. And if I start to add in more notes, then I think it can start to be more refined. So it's all building blocks. So if I'm adding in more notes, one thing to think about when you're navigating changes is you want to know the triads. So if it's A, or, we've got that, we've got this, or we've got these A major triads. And, mapping those out. So one thing I could do is I could say, well, okay, what if I'm just going to jam on A and just use arpeggios? See what happens with that. So again, it's still just triads, and it's not quite the sound that we're used to in tunes yet, but we're just giving ourselves foundation. So now I'm using A major as the full triad, just kind of working out the whole range in that position. Now, to get some of the bluesy sound, this is where I had to do some things like transcribing off of records and stuff like that, like learning people's actual solos to know what are some of the bluesy notes that people are using when you're playing over a major blues. So one thing that comes to mind is the idea of major pentatonic, A major pentatonic. Okay, so we got the major pentatonic, which is root. We got the 2, 3, 5, 6, and the root again. But what I noticed when I was transcribing a lot of blues records is I don't hear the 2 a lot. I don't hear the second degree used a lot, at least in straight ahead blues. Maybe in bluesy type stuff, the 2 is used more. But if I jam with just the 2, it doesn't sound super bluesy. Maybe a little bit more country or something, but I don't know. I just didn't really hear the 2 being used a lot in the major pentatonic, which kind of surprised me. So what I did start to hear was like using the flat 7. And because if we're playing like an A7, for our 1 chord, that to me was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So we swap the 2 instead of the B. We add in the flat 7. In this case, it's G. So we start. Triads, 3rd to 5th there. So I started to go, okay, that flat 7's got that color to it. It's all about what I found in these transcriptions was the flat 7 and the 6. So I was like, okay, those are some more of the bluesy major notes, I guess. Mixolydian, you could think of it. And also, of course, the 3rd coming in from a half step. Stuff like that. We hear a lot, right? So maybe the 6th, that kind of sound. So the minor 3rd into the major 3rd is very bluesy sounding, major blues sounding. And then I also noticed that the 4 was used. It was always kind of told to me like, hey, don't use the 4 because it's like a tension note and it doesn't work. Well, I started to hear a lot of players using the 4 in their solos. So like, for example, this phrase. Right, so the root to the 4, the D, into the 3rd. Like that sound. So I was like, okay, that 4 is kind of very bluesy, very interesting. Or something like that kind of sound where it's like third into the 4, back into the third, down the triad. So just a triad here. So it's like kind of these fourths, these sevenths, these tension tones are, I guess, dressing up, the triads. The triads are kind of, basic, foundational, kind of vanilla, sounding. But when you dress them up, you kind of add in those sixths, the half steps and things like that. Now it starts to sound, I don't know, what guys are playing on records. So, transcribing records and getting ideas from the actual blues players is definitely a great way to actually know how the notes and language works. And then once you find an idea that you like, you can maybe turn it into a riff. So let's say we take this idea. It's kind of a very quintessential blues riff. Okay, what if I move that through the blues changes? So I go to D, I can move it over here. Back to A. Got to go to E, back to D, back to A, then to E. So now I'm using that as a riff to kind of navigate the changes there. And that kind of helps organize, the ideas and, the vocabulary. So what if I took another riff? Let's see. I think I learned that from a Wes Montgomery solo. I think off of West Coast Blues. Something like that. So which is cool. The root, minor third into the major third, into the sixth, fifth, back to root. Root to the 4 again. So there it is again. So we take that. 2, 3, 4. D, 3, 4. Back to the A. Now to the 5, E. Maybe you change it to fit the rate of the changes, like going from E to A or E to D. So I'm really using the same information off of each chord, the A chord, for example, and moving it to the D and moving it to the E, so it's more manageable. I don't have to play like a completely new idea or view the fretboard differently. I'm trying to kind of keep everything as similar as possible so it's easier to tie everything together. So anyway, lots of stuff to cover. There's more than enough stuff there's too much stuff to cover in one video for blues. But for you guys who are wanting to play changes, I would start with some basic triads to D or E, and just get some ideas going with that. And then think about, major pentatonics. You could switch your major pentatonics in conjunction with each chord in the blues. Then the D. Back to A. Now E. D. Back to A. E. Now A again. D. A. Here's D. A. E. D. A. E. So just major pentatonics moving through each change. Or then you can add in the flat 7 to make it more of a dominant sound. D7. Back to A7. E7. D7. A7. E. So you notice I use same shape. Use the same shape through the E, D, and A change. Kind of ties it together, simplifies it, at least for me. And then, you know, just kind of some of those color tones, the 4. Now D7. Back to A. There's a flat 7. Now E. All right, guys, so I know it's a lot. Hopefully some of this was insightful or give you some ideas or some approaches just to try on a major blues and addressing some of those things and see how it goes. If this was helpful, let me know in the comments. If there's some stuff you want to learn more about, specific ideas about playing the changes, let me know. And drop it in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.